Hey, Catherine, we're really excited to have you here. It's always a joy to spend time with you.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here. I love talking with y'all, and there's always some good conversation. So,
We've got some great questions for you. And without any further delay, we're just going to go ahead and dive right in. Mainstream media sends us a particular message about nutrition. I'm hoping that you can share just a couple of those messages that we seem to hear quite frequently from the mainstream media, as well as helping to give us some ways that we can think about nutrition a little bit differently.
I don't love the way that mainstream media paints the picture of nutrition. So there's kind of two big things that I always like to talk about when it comes to sort of the way that I think about nutrition and health and holistic nutrition a little differently. And the first is that I think that it helps to think about nutrition as a practice rather than a destination. And I don't love cute little memes. That's not really my personality, but sort of the idea of like the value being in the journey and not the destination. And so to explain that a little bit, I think for moms and for dads out there, I think we do a really good job sometimes of focusing with our kids on sort of stages of life. And yes, we get cluttered by the things that we think we're working towards. But one way to think about this a little different is the same way that we think about character, right, for our children and for ourselves. And if I were to ask you or any of you out there, sort of what is it that you hope your child will embody one day, right? Then you would probably come up with some really cool words. And I hear all kinds of really cool values and character traits that people think about when I ask that question. Okay, so if you think about sort of kindness, is there a checkbox? Or if we're working towards respect or honesty, if I'm teaching that to my child, do I teach them as though it's something that there's an end, sort of a beginning and an end to? And again, most of us immediately think of no, right? It's not a destination process. We're not working towards one final end. And I think we recognize even in ourselves that that's an ever evolving process. And even the way that I think about kindness or honesty or any of these other values that I want someone to embody changes over the years. And I want it to change. I want it to kind of be evolving as I grow up and as I mature, and same for my children. And so translate that to health a little bit, right? Is that I think because of the way that we measure health, which is often by labs and by weight, right? And very much numbers driven for most of our culture. We are often thinking about health as a beginning and an end, right? I'm here and I want to go there. And a lot of us have started to think about it a little differently, and that, well, what happens when I get there? And if I have this sort of number in my mind, where am I going to be a different person? And sort of what's beneath all of that? And so I really like to help talk through with women and with men, what does it look like to practice health for you? What does it mean to practice that and think of it more almost as a character trait, right? And it's, again, not the exact translation, but like all of a sudden we start to think more about day to day. I start to think more about behaviors that are healthy for me and for my family, right? So that looks like getting outside and getting my face in the sun occasionally, and going for walks either with my family or by myself, moving my body, eating meals, sitting down to eat my meals, right? And then all of a sudden I start to tune in more on what does the practice and the process of health look like, rather than focusing so much on this somewhat vague, somewhat specific destination that might change in my life. So I think that's a biggie for me, is really trying to work sort of transition even the way that we approach. I think y'all do a great job of talking about sort of our mindset and the language that we use around different areas of health. And this is a big one as it relates to nutrition and thinking of it more as a practice and less as a destination. So that's a big one for me. The other that's sort of entwined in that is always trying to help women and men think about, what am I working towards, right? So even if it's that day-to-day practice, this idea of nutrition as a game of maximizing and a practice of maximizing and pursuit rather than minimizing. Because I think we can all agree that for the last 20 years, nutrition, right? You ask someone that word, and immediately we think of what I'm eating that I shouldn't be eating, what I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing, the workouts that I'm not doing, what I'm eating too much of, right? Our minds always go to sort of, what do I need to remove from my diet when we think about nutrition? And even me, right? That's still like the first thought that comes to mind is, what should I take out when we think about improving our nutrition? And I really like to flip that conversation around and think about, what might I need to add in? What am I not getting enough of that's going to help me feel better and function better? And what am I really like, what does it mean for me to maximize my nutrition and my health? So again, sort of this idea of pursuit and looking at like, how am I building myself, right? How am I growing myself rather than what am I taking away when it comes to nutrition? So I would say that those are kind of my two biggies that differ from a lot of mainstream media information.
Thank you. You're right. It's so ingrained in us, that mainstream media, and shifting that perspective is so important. And everything you said just was beautifully stated. And thank you so much for that.